Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Pursuit the Pod. Man, today I am so excited to share my conversation with Val Aguilar. As soon as I started talking to Val, I knew I wanted to have her on the pod because very quickly I understood that her pursuits are not ego driven, but rather they're driven by service. Val is currently serving as an officer in the Air National Guard while balancing a high level civilian engineering career. As Val will describe, her path to this has been anything but straightforward. She's the daughter of a Green Beret, but she was not a U.S. citizen when she first felt called to serve in the military herself. After trying several paths, she found that the way in was enlisting in the 122nd Fighter Wing while still being a green card holder because she recognized the opportunities in life she had and wanted to serve a greater purpose outside herself. That alone tells you the kind of person Val is. Growing up, she moved countries and she experienced cultural shifts, financial instability, and language barriers, and she still pushed her way through engineering at Purdue while doing the ROTC program. When doors initially closed on her because of her citizenship status, she didn't quit. Rather, she adjusted. She served enlisted, earned citizenship, and now serves as an officer in the Air National Guard. Faith is the key driver in her life. But this episode is for you whether you're religious or not, because there are 5 key life lessons I learned from Val that transcend religion. Number 1 is to ask yourself, if I've been given this mind, this body, this opportunity, am I using it to the fullest potential? Or am I getting lazy and entitled? The lazy and entitled words are mine, not Val's. Number 2, resilience through reframing setbacks. When she couldn't pursue becoming an officer due to her lack of citizenship, she did not spiral into asking, why me? She asked a better question. What is the next best thing I can do? She embodies this idea that nothing is a setback unless you decide that it is. Number 3, community is like the interlocked roots of sequoia trees. Now, this one personally hits close to home to me if you know anything about my family. It was very interesting because Val brought up sequoia trees and how they grow incredibly tall, not because they have massive individual root systems, but because their root systems are actually interlocked with the trees around them. She explains how strength does not come from isolation, it comes from connection. Number 4, discipline is self-respect. I was inspired because her 5 a.m. workouts aren't just about physical health, but they're also about a way of putting herself first before the demands of corporate America pull at her energy every day. And number 5, service is a path to fulfillment. For Val, her service is a non-negotiable. This shows up in her dedication to her faith, in her dedication to the military. And the military is her vehicle, but she's clear with us that service does not have to be that. It can be as simple as handing out water at a marathon. And the point here is there is something incredibly meaningful about contributing beyond yourself. And without further ado, my conversation with Val.
So I was born and raised actually in Bogota, Colombia. So that's South America. And I was 14 by the time I moved out of Colombia. So I was 14, and again, that South America, Spanish speaking country. And then I moved to Costa Rica at the age of 14. Costa Rica is super cool as well. Lived there for a couple years. And at the age of 16, my dad decided that it was time for us to come to the US. So my dad is a Special Forces Green Beret Army guy. And he said, nope, it's time to go to the US. And my mom said, absolutely not. My dad said, we're going to have to do it. And he's like, it's better for the kids, it's better for everybody's school and college and whatnot. And at the age of 16, I came to Schaumburg, Illinois. So quite the pivot there, right? As soon as I came to Illinois, it was December time frame. So never seen or felt the snow. I don't think I've ever felt anything below 60 degrees, actually. And I went out of O'Hare Airport and it came right around. So that was quite the weather shocker there for a little bit. But yeah, that my high school career in Illinois, and obviously Illinois is pretty close to Purdue. I wanted to just go to a top 10 engineering school. Purdue was obviously in the top 10 kind of list that made my demands. And, you know, I'm really grateful to God that I was able to get into Purdue and did my 4 or 5 year gig there. I did a couple co-ops. That's where I kind of found my love a little bit of manufacturing on my end. And at the age of 17, before I went to college, I knew I wanted to join. I wanted to kind of everybody tells you, you gotta serve the country. You're like there's more than that, but perhaps I would say one of the best things you can say. I don't think that the term foreigner, it's a bad term. I think it's actually something that I identify very deeply, right? I was not born and raised in the US, but I believe there is a price to pay the moment you come to the US, right? I believe living in a different country really humbles you to understand that these freedoms that when you come to the US are truly not to be taken for granted. And there are people all the way from World War I, even before then, right, that fought for what we have right now, right? I'd say one of the most painful wars we have in the US is probably Vietnam. And there's a lot of Vietnam veterans out there, and they put their lives into line, their teammates, their families. And so I couldn't just go into college like knowing that all these people basically paid for all this. And I just got to, like kind of live that American dream and just go to college, right? I was like, wait a second, there's more. And so I went to my dad. I said, hey, Dad, I want to join the Army. He's like, absolutely not. You're joining the Air Force. And so that was interesting. He's like, no, you got the brains. You should probably go to the Air Force. There's career fields that require more of a brain in the Air Force. I said, all right, Dad, let's do it. So on our first question there, like what was the thought behind willing to like kind of give up that life and in fact give up some of those freedoms, right? There's things in the military that we are not allowed to do.
Right. Yeah.
And it just really came from paying what's due, right? And if other people don't have that mindset, that's totally fine. I understand. I just have a background in which I am extremely appreciative of the opportunities that God gave me just coming to the US, and I just knew I had to serve the country one way or another. I've been in for 7 years, almost 8 this September, and I don't regret anything. I in fact, I want to stay the full 20 years. If the Air Force allows me, I'll stay more, right? And hopefully I'm healthy and all that fun stuff. But my road to the Air Force was not as simple, right? I'll probably pivot into that second question that you got there, Anya. What have you learned from my military experience? So it was quite the zoo early on, right? So I wanted to go into the academy, right? The Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs. And I wanted to become an officer. And unfortunately, for you to become an officer, you have to be a U.S. citizen. And by the time I graduated high school, I was still under a green card. So my dad kind of fumbled there a little bit. And I did not receive U.S. citizenship through my dad because by the time we kind of got caught up with all the immigration stuff, I was over the age of 18. So I kind of just had like a permanent resident card. And unfortunately, with a permanent resident card, you have to hold that for 5 years before you can become a U.S. citizen. So one of the biggest lessons there in life is you can't buy time. No matter how hard you do whatever you want to do, you just can't buy the time. And so I'm like, dang it, I can't do the academy because I'm not a U.S. citizen, right? So for you to become an officer in the U.S. Air Force, and actually to become an officer in any of the branches, you have to be a U.S. citizen. And I couldn't buy myself time. So I've only been with the green card at that time for 3 years. And I'm like, damn it. Well, I still want to serve, So the academy said, sorry, ain't going to happen here unless you're a citizen. And I said, well, I have no time to lose. So I figured if I join ROTC at Purdue, maybe I'll get the reins. But turns out that ROTC also cannot commission you unless you have your U.S. citizenship, right? So I did 1 year in ROTC at Purdue, and halfway through my first semester freshman year, I realized that even if I was the fastest, the strongest, the most committed, the smartest, I still couldn't become a U.S. Air Force officer. So I said, what are my options, right? And the reserve and the guard and the Air Force, actually, because they're controlled by the state, at least the guard, they were still allowing green card holders to join the military. And I said, well, I want to serve, again, that same mentality. I want to keep, I want to pay that price. And so I tried the reserves. Then they said, sorry, only U.S. citizens. But then the guard did allow me to join. So in 2018, September 22nd of 2018, or 28th of 2018, I decided to take an oath and enlist completely. So in May of 2019, I went to basic military training, and that was the zoo. So I'd say, what have you learned from my military experience? Oh man, the military will just bring you on all sorts of fun things, coming from 1 year of an experience at Purdue, lots of different people from all over the world. And then you just get to be treated kind of like you're nothing, right? They don't really acknowledge you for an airman, or you're not part of their team, and they make sure they know you. They're like, you came to us, We don't need you. Why are you here in our Air Force, right? You want to be a wingman? Then you will be, right? So you get into these dorms, you shower and do everything with 50 other girls. It's a mess. You don't know anybody. You don't have your phone. You're secluded for 2.5 months. It's it's pretty rough there, but
Wow, that
maybe.
sounds intense.
So
Yeah.
it was a little intense, but anyways, you get through that. And I did 4 or 5 years, again at Purdue. And I went back to my base, did my technical school as a logistics personnel. And, maybe I can pivot a little bit into my civilian life. But again, all through my military career, I kind of struggled going into a degree without really understanding what I was going to do with that degree. And so on my second semester of my sophomore year, I took a co-op with a company called Altec Industries. It's one of those big bucket truck companies that a lot of electricians use. Every time people go up in a pool, they usually use these trucks, and that's when I found my love for the manufacturing side of any kind of processes. So with the military, I kind of took back that baseline, and that structure that the military give you, right? So you can really get into the weeds and pretty lost when you have like military and you have civilian and co-op and school and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really took back that discipline to my civilian life, right? I'm like, wait a second. What's the schedule? What's something that I can create as a routine? What is not only the routine, but what can I make this as a discipline, right? I believe that mindset that you want to have is just all based out of discipline, right?
Oh, I love that.
And
Yeah.
it's just discipline, Anya.
Hmm.
Like if you think about like every day, when you go on your runs or when you go into your lifts, everybody has the opportunity. Most people have the opportunity to do it. Some people don't because of some physical constraints. But discipline doesn't have to be only with fitness, right? It could be spiritually as well, right? It could
Right.
be with your family, with your social life.
Right.
Whatever discipline you want to keep and maintain, then make it, right? But people kind of just get lost into the reality of life. But
And
but that's what I'm taking into a civilian.
that short-term
Um,
gratification, it's this balance between that long-term and that discipline is what builds that long-term happiness. But I think especially, in your 20s and late teens, people can get tied up in that short-term gratification that comes from
yep.
a lack of discipline. And so it's very
Mhm.
inspiring to hear you how you're able to develop that in the military and then translate that into your civilian life.
And I would say like even if we look at our phones, right? Everybody says it and stuff like that, but you can doom scroll for like ages, right? We just keep looking for the next best thing, next best thing, the next best thing that is going to make you laugh or cry or make you feel a certain way.
Right. And
When
it's
in
like sitting in
reality,
that board. People are so
over and
afraid
over
of
again.
just, yeah, it's always seeking that dopamine, that next thing, and getting addicted to that versus actually building something, more long term. Sticking to those like spiritual goals, really getting in touch
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's like your next question a little bit on like how do you also deal with people that have not gone through the same training of you, right? How do you translate that into like people don't really behave the way you behave, right? People don't wake up normally at 4 a.m., Like if you think, oh, what is Val doing at 4:30 a.m.? Probably up ready to go on a CrossFit class.
Heck
And
yeah. Oh
so
my gosh. I feel like I need to, we need to be friends in person. This is what I'm talking about.
no, I'm telling you. And I'm like, people are like, I could never work on in the mornings. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I'm like, that's me with like all my other friends that are like 50, 60-year-old people that just are as
Yes.
crazy as I am doing a workout at 5 a.m. And I'm like, I don't care.
Okay,
Um,
I want
yeah.
to pause you right here. I want to dig into that. Like you are the epitome of pursuit, Val, and you're one of the first people, especially women, who I've been able, and especially our age. You're what, 26?
I just turned 27. Yeah, I just turned
Okay,
27.
27, like our age with this mentality. So I really want to dig in. Like what gave you this ability and this desire to pursue and this discipline?
So I would say like I would pivot. So like there's like the four pillars, right, in life that you have. And I'd say like my biggest pillar apart from my family obviously is my spiritual faith, right? So I grew up in a Christian household throughout my whole life, right? And for the people that like don't know about Jesus, who are they out for a treat the moment they get to just have a taste of what the word says? So for me, it's just I focus into my spiritual faith a lot, right? I lean in into like my values and in my core. And again, everybody has different cores. I have one of my best friends from Purdue. She's an electrical engineer. Her name is Patul. She's Muslim and she leans in into her faith tremendously too. And it's a woman that is extremely motivated. She actually works for G Aerospace too, like just very into her religion. And it's what is what keeps us grounded, right? You kind of have to have a core.
Hmm.
And I believe having a spiritual core is what really determines you from being getting yourself into like good and bad, right? There's people that even don't identify that with religion. They just think of like these are good things and bad things. That's also fine, right? I don't believe, again, we live in a country where like there is that freedom of expression, right? And so whatever that core that people represent to be, it should be, for me, comes down to just the plain reality that I know Jesus died for our sins, and at the end of the day, even though we were sinners, Jesus knew that, and he still, I think it's like Romans 5:8, even though we were sinners, like God still came and died for us. So that kind of mercy and that kind of like drive, you don't find that anywhere else, right? So with that in mind, how can I take for granted these opportunities that are extremely unlikely, right? Anya, I would go back all the way from my childhood. I would have never in a million years thought that I was gonna be coming to this country with these kind of opportunities. And I almost do a disfavor to all the Hispanic and whatever other cultures that are out there that come to the US and we don't do something with our lives. Like, why shouldn't we do something with our lives when we've been given these opportunities, And at the end of the day, I just know that God is touching other people through me. And I just want to allow him to use me in whatever way, right? At the end of the day, we like chase this gratification, this economic gratification, or this kind of like solid and like even like people just want to acquire more things and get more things and properties and money, and all that is just like the riches of the world. But the riches that I am interested are up there, not down here, right? Whatever comes over here, love it, awesome. I love my job. We can translate to my civilian job eventually too. We want to get into those weeds too, but at the end of the day, they're not my resources. That's just what I think, and I like to bless other people also with the resources that I have and foundations in Colombia from people that, again, they're not well versed. And I can talk about for ages. I can even like get emotional about it, but you should use your every single opportunity. Every day is an opportunity for you to do something different. Is the truth. People would die to be in your shoes. Everybody should know that. So.
Well, and that is what I want to dig into with you is really where that deep motivation comes from. And so, what sorts of life experiences did you have in Colombia, in Costa Rica, where it gave you this appreciation for what we do have in the US specifically?
Mm. So I'd say my mom, she was a businesswoman. She had a pretty good company. It was like a suit company in Colombia. And she actually got a divorce with my biological dad when I was 12. So that was quite the change there for a second. And I would say when we go into Costa Rica, right, my mom kind of just went into a transition with like selling her company and whatnot. And I would say I went to the highest of highs when I was in Colombia, right? I was in private school. I was just somebody that was given the opportunity to even like learn English. I mean, not to this level. When it came to the US, I could not speak like this at all. I got all sorts of funny stories about how embarrassing it was for me, but that's a stories for another days. But in Costa Rica, I'd say my family presented like financial responsibilities that we couldn't commit to, right? And you felt that financial burden. And at some point you got to lean in, you got to have that faith that the God is going to do something for you, and I would say like I've seen all sorts of miracles happen in my life. I've been in the moments where like I'm like, oh man, like I don't know what's going to happen with my family. I don't know what's going to happen with us. I don't think I can go to my school anymore, right? There's like dues that you have to pay. And we just couldn't, right? And so like you kind of just look up at the sky, just go down into your knees, and you're like, God, just help us, help
So you're
our
saying
family.
your family couldn't afford the school. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. So my school couldn't be afforded anymore, and like seeing your family and that like financial unrest really gets you, I would say, You're never going to find money, you're never going to have find happiness through money, but I would say in this society, money gives you stability, or the stability that you think you have. And when you, as my mom gets, she's a fashion designer, with a lack of stability in a recent divorce, it can be pretty detrimental, right? And I guess let's go back to like where that drive and that stuff comes from, right? I mean, my mom was a single parent, she had 3 kids, right? A business completely gone in a whole different country. Imagine her mental stability, her like emotional stability, her fitness, her spiritual, and
Wow.
the fact that she had the strength to like overcome all that and still have the faith to know that God was going to take care of it, right? So that kind of faith and that kind of like leaning into that unknown is probably one of the biggest things that I think of whenever I think of the motivation. I'm like, and I just think of something so light. I cannot imagine the people in Colombia that actually struggle because their businesses are not performing well. Of all the people, even in the US, right, that they live like that paycheck by paycheck, like it sucks. It just sucks. And I'd say more people would not like to admit the fact that they live paycheck by paycheck and it just sucks. But I just go back to like those lessons that God never left me behind. And even when we've badly behaved, he left the 99 to get that one. And he'll do it ever over and over again for us. So with that kind of mercy, I just, you know, everything is easy. So
What an incredible perspective to get at such a young age, and that you've been able to translate that now. It's the epitome of those hard times truly fundamentally making you better and giving you that faith. And so,
mhm,
yeah, I also
100%.
want to dig into how do you interact with people who don't have this mentality, who the worst thing in their life is something. I don't want to even say an example because I don't want to put anyone down, because pain is relative, right? But let's
Yeah.
say somebody you've experienced financial struggles. You've experienced moving to two different countries. You've experienced basic training. You've experienced hard things. And it is of you seek out hard things. So tell me about how you interact with people, and just different perspectives that don't see that bigger
Yeah.
picture.
So I think that one of the first things that people fail to do. So there's everybody can be a leader, okay? You can lead a troop, you can lead a team, you can be a project manager, you can be a supervisor, you can lead. One of the hardest things a leader can do is to build other leaders. I would say it's almost impossible for a lot of leaders to build other leaders. Only very few leaders can build leaders. And that should always be the hardest task as a leader. So when I connect with people, the only way you're going to build them to be good leaders and be a leader is to get to know them. And not to get to know them superficially, right? It starts very simple, right? Hey, like, tell me about you. Like, what, like, why did you do this? Why did you study this? Like, where did you go to school? Like, where did you grow up? Right. Tell me about, like, even if you just find a little bit of that core, you can deeply connect with somebody, right?
Mm,
So as I said, like I continue to meet people that are a completely different religion, people that never do any sports, people that don't know anything about the military, right? And the military is like half of my life, right?
right.
Just like I know people that are all military junkies, right? So it just starts at the most basic, simple level, right? Like, can you spend the time to get to know somebody? So
Mm,
many people don't. So many people just rush right through. It's like, hey, how's it going? It's like, oh,
mm,
where do you go to school? Oh, just Illinois. Oh, cool, cool. That's nice, man. Yeah, what do you do? Oh, I just, I do engineering. And that's it. They just stay superficial.
mm.
And that's never how you're gonna connect with people. And that starts from being genuine. Like, can you have genuine interactions, or are you doing it because of a selfish motive or just to
You
fill the space?
That
If you're gonna
right there, yep.
if you're gonna fill the space, then just don't talk to somebody, right? And I think people eventually, people that are introverts, well, there's nothing wrong with it. They just don't. And you know what? Sometimes those are the people that are the happiest because they're like, you know what? I'm not gonna fill that empty space. I just don't care. That's fine. What's worked with me is that I do care. I care for you. I care for your brother. I care for my neighbor. I care for the people in front of you. I was going. This is so funny. This of course would only happen to me. I'm just, doing work, and I'm in this business travel, and I go to like Longhorn, and the lady that is attending me is like this young 19-year-old. And next thing you know, she's like, yeah, I am going to California because of my boyfriend. He's in the military, he's in the Navy, and I hope he's an officer one day. And she's spilling all her life to me. And I'm like, how did we even get here? Towards the end of our conversation, she's like, hey, do you mind just giving me your phone number? I would just like to like bounce ideas off of you. I'm like, of course, but I met you 20 minutes ago. But that's it. You see that? You see that? Like, I just I just let her talk. Like, what makes you you? And if you're not genuine about it, people are not gonna open up to you. They're just not going to.
What do
So,
you, what do you wish more people knew about you?
um, I would always say, I think the people that know me, they would know that I am a Jesus follower. But if they don't know, they should know that I'm a Jesus follower. But if there was a second thing that I would hope people know is um that I'm that kind of person that would die for every single one of us, right? Like Jesus did for all of us, and he set that example. And I'm not scared of doing that too, right? I told you a little bit of my upcoming commitments here with the military. And I would say that I would do that with every single American. Every single American is worth it. Every single one, every single person is worth you fighting for. We can even talk about the Olympics. Every person that is out there at the Olympics, they don't do it only for them. They do it for the country. They don't represent only themselves. They represent the flag, right? So if I could just tell people to know that I represent the flag, and it should be always about the flag. That's where it hones down to this nation.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Do you feel that your father being in the Green Berets influenced that at all?
Oh yeah, he's he's a total badass. When I was a sophomore in high school, I sprained my ankle like really, really bad. And he's like, "Can you not walk on it?" I'm like, "Nah, dude." He's like, "Val, I got shot in this foot 3 times and this other foot 2 times, and I walked for a mile." And I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry that I just sprained my ankle. I didn't get shot, and you were able to walk, and I have crutches going on. So yeah, I think he created that resiliency, just when it comes to a physical aspect, but also in the mental. He said, "Val, if you take things too serious, life is not worth living," right? He's like, it's not that deep, don't take things personal, just
Mhm.
sometimes you people are so quick to speak and not slow to listen. So he was like, Val, be slow to speak, and be quick to listen, right? And I would say, like, I've embodied that. I try every day. Sometimes I'm not successful, but I try to, even in new settings. I'm like, okay, Val, let's just be quick to listen. Can we be slow to speak, right? And he said, if you're in the military, specifically, for example, for me in the civil engineer squadron, I can't take things personal. If I take things personal, man, I will be in trouble, because there's a bunch of males. They don't
Mhm.
take things personal, right? You have to think of of what theater you're on, right? I have a bunch of guys from the Midwest. Everybody just shoots the shit, like, you can't take things personal, right? People get so offended so quickly. And I'm not saying that there's not things that are out of pocket. Absolutely. And there's things that are out of pocket. And that's when you put a stop to it, right? So obviously, never be scared of also speaking your mind when things are not sitting right on that end. But again, I have a good way to balance those things out, at least. So.
And talk to the discipline during those times, like let's say 4:30 a.m. You don't want to go to that CrossFit class. Okay, you don't want to. Now, what's the next step? What's the next step in Val's brain? What's the next
So
thought in Val's brain?
so the thing about life is that there's always the next best thing, right?
Oh,
You, for
I love that.
example,
Yes. Yep.
it's just the next best thing, right? Like, let's say, like, the mental thing was not there, right? The problem that I have is that my job takes a lot of my energy, and I love my job. I love what I do. I love the product. I love what we stand for. I love the company. um it's a pretty big company, that, but I've honestly enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoy what we stand for. And the thing about it is that over time, though, you put them first. And that is probably one of our biggest problems in America, right? That we put these massive corporations above your own well-being, right? I'm not saying that you should not be passionate. As I said, like, I am the most passionate about my company. But the problem is that for some reason my brain wires to, oh, it's fine. Like, we have the next best thing, which is like work, like, I love my work. I love doing this. But what I found out, Anya, is that after 4 p.m., 4:30, 5 p.m., I don't have the drive anymore to work out because I'm exhausted, right? I'm like, I am done. I'm like, I want to eat. I'm hungry. If I don't feed my body good, then my results are also going to skimp, stuff like that. So I know that if I don't put again, for me, my faith and my body first in the morning, then I'm just not going to do it later. That's just me, right? There's some people that it works out for the night, but I like to put my well-being and my fitness as a priority. And here's the thing, what I found out is that the job continues. The show must go on. And if you don't put yourself first in these situations, work is always going to overrun you. There always will, because you're a good performer, right? So I found out that when I think about that, even in the mornings, let's say I wake up and I haven't had a good sleep and I don't want to work out, the moment I think about how I'm not putting myself first because work is going to come first, immediately I jump off the bed. I'm like, no. Um, and unfortunately, Anya, that is corporate America for you, right? They make you believe that this job is everything. That's not true. Let me tell you some little secret that people hate knowing. People are not that special. They have the replacement of your job the moment you leave. The moment you leave, they already know who's going to replace you. They do it with the US president. They do it with every significant public figure. They do it with the NFL director. They do it with the NFL coaches. Everybody has a replacement. And so people need to understand that a job is never that deep to rob your patience. It's just not that deep. Put yourself first in the mornings,
Okay,
focus on yourself.
so let's dive in right here. So how do you balance being that high performer? Because being a high performer sometimes means working on the weekends, it means working late, and it
Yeah.
means getting there to get the job done. And as someone like you who has that drive to be a top performer as you are, how do you how do you how do you balance that with not with not putting the company over absolutely everything, but also sometimes it does take the grind to work on the weekend to get it done because you know you will do good for your team. So talk about that balance right there, being a high performer and
Right.
also putting yourself first.
So let's talk about like I'll do a reference to stock levels, right? So every company, I would say a bean company, egg company, you can talk about manufacturing cars, anything. Everything has a safety stock, okay? Equipment and parts can do this reorder point, right? And maybe I'm talking about manufacturing, but I'm gonna translate this really quickly, right? So they have the safety point, right? The safety point, which is every time an element goes below a certain level, it automatically reorders. So I think of this in my life too, right? Like what's my safety point, right? Like when is the moment where like I on discharge so much because I'm burned out, right? Or because work or military or whatnot's being so much. What's my safety net where like I'm like somebody call me out because I'm obviously overworked or overwhelmed or whatnot, right? And I would tell you that I've created a pretty good, again with God's help, but I created a good circle of a circle of trust, right? Which again, that comprises with my mom, my brother, my father, a couple of my best friends. I would say the older you get, the smaller your circle becomes, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And you just only you have finite time, right? So you can't
Mhm.
give your time to everybody. Is it true? You got to start picking and choosing. It doesn't mean that anybody's above the other one. It's just sometimes in your life there are people that are more available than others, right? And so I have this circle of trust. I called them the safety circle there, and they kind of call me out. They've gotten to know me over the years, right? And I try to be as honest as I can with them. And the moment they see me that I react a little different, they call me out, right? So there's moments that I come home and maybe I'm a little, I kind of like snap a little too quickly, or maybe I like seem uninterested, or maybe even as simple as like, let's say I'm watching a movie, right? And I fall asleep within the first 20 minutes, like that is like huge indication she's exhausted, she needs to rest. And so kind of having it doesn't even have to be a circle. It can be one person, it can be two people, right? It could be you doing a self check every Saturday morning. It could be you putting an alarm every Thursday at 6 p.m. to just do a 10-minute like mental offload, which is how am I feeling right now, right? I get to rely on some of my closest people to do that rate for me, because often we're kind of blind to it, right? So I would say just I offload into the people that get to know me the most, and then they kind of rain check on me. They're like, "Hey, I think it's time for you to just chill." And you know what? You have to be humble enough to be like, "Ooh, you know what?
Mhm.
You're right. You're right." So
I
so you
think
gotta trust them,
I
So
I think you hit it on the head because relationships are one of the biggest mirrors of ourselves. I think a lot of times, I mean, I live alone, so a lot of times I can get in my grind set mindset. And then after 3 weeks of not hanging out with a friend, I'm sitting 8 p.m. alone in my room on a
Dude, I
Friday
know.
night and I'm sad. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, it's because I
Dude,
haven't
yeah.
socialized and taken that time. And
Mm,
then I interact with somebody and they ask me what my schedule is. And I'm like, I'm going to do this at 12:30, this at 2:30, this. And I they look at me and I'm like, oh, like I'm kind of living it. It just puts it's like, oh, I'm living very prescribed life, which has its
yeah.
benefits in terms of productivity, but then you can kind of go off the deep end in terms of not really taking that time to sit and reflect of, am I just overworking to outrun something, to just not think about this other thing, like
Hmm.
get in work
Hmm.
mode. And and then for, if you are somebody who is motivated to do things, you can fall, you know, towards that scale. And it sometimes takes other people around you to be like, hey, like yeah, you are falling asleep 10 minutes into this movie. Why are you snapping at me for accidentally
Yeah.
closing the door too hard? Whereas
Yeah,
if you were just
exactly.
alone, there would be no feedback.
Exactly.
It's that
Yeah.
feedback loop. It's like a control system,
It's
and
like a
other
control
people
system. Hmm.
can serve as that feedback loop to us. Now,
Yeah, again, I call them my safety stock, right? A feedback loop safety stock. I got a good example for you on that. I don't want to cut your train of thought, but after you're done, I got a good example for you on that.
absolutely. I want to dig in here. So how do you one, do you surround yourself with high performers like yourself? And two, how do you prevent yourself from becoming average?
Right. And so is actually pretty good. Back in 2020, I visited a park in California. I visited the sequoias, which are the biggest tree by volume in the world. And when I was there, I felt like a midget. I was walking through this park and I'm like, what the heck? Like they tell me that these trees can burn because of the material they're made out of. And I'm like, in what world does this tree like live? And then I thought of the roots, right? I just thought of like, like what makes a tree, which is the roots. And I'm like, the roots are probably massive. The roots are probably massive
Mm.
underground. This whole mountain has got roots. Turns out, Anya, the roots of a sequoia tree are actually quite small compared to the volume of the tree. And I thought to myself, how do these things even stand? Like, how do they even stand? So apparently, the sequoia trees interlock their roots underground with other sequoia trees. And when they move and there's a lot of winds and whatnot, they move together. And so there's this idea, the representation of the community, right? If you can be as tall as a volume tree as you want to, you can be the biggest volume tree as you want to in the world. But if you don't have those roots interlocked with other trees, a wind's going to come
Mhm.
back and just dump you right out, right? So to go back to your question, I would say I don't surround myself only for high performer athletes. I like to have it a little varied, right? I'd say people that are really high performance people are not are missing the point of life if you're just always performing too good. I believe it doesn't allow you enough room to fail, and unfortunately because you perform so high, you forget to fail. And because you forget to fail, then you think like you can continue because you don't fail and then you feel so good about it. But it's in the failures where you create the best gardens because you remember what it was. And so I'd say I have a little bit of combination of both, right? Like I have one of my closest friends, she's from the military. She is actually fitter than I am. She would tell you she's stronger than I am too, which I think is funny. And so funny enough, you kind of have that camaraderie and people that politely and friendly call you out. They're like, yeah, I'm stronger than you. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you are, but I'm still working and becoming stronger, right? So I would say I don't compete with anybody around me. I compete with who I was yesterday, right? I would say if I give my best effort of who I was yesterday, that is good enough for me. Um, I would say with some of my folks that I have a couple friends from Purdue, and they're like, "I'm never gonna do a master's," and I'm like, "Dude, why?" I'm like, "Just finish it." I'm like, "It took me a couple of years. I just finished in December," and it's like, "No, Val, it doesn't work." I'm like, "I've been able to bike, and I'm like, triathlon and whatnot," and I'm like, you know what? I love it. I love it because it's their wins, right? So not because they're not high performers in like multiple areas in their life means that they're not high performers in their life, right? Everything, unfortunately, everything becomes shinier or duller if you compare it to something else, right? That's my mentality, right? So I would say I try to have a variety of people that bring different perspectives, because it's very important for you to feel humble from your failures. It is really important.
Huh. That is
Hmm.
that is very fascinating, and you're able to it's the saying everybody's a teacher.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. I'd say the can you hear me still?
Yeah. Yeah, loud and
Yep.
clear.
I would say one of the interesting parts that some of my military training taught me in officer training school is that you have to follow in order for you to lead, right? And you cannot lead if you don't know how to follow, right? It kind of goes vice versa. And at first, I didn't really like it. I was like, no, you can just, people just have natural born leaders, you know? They're like, have these characters. But unfortunately, it is, or fortunately for some, it is when you follow that you notice either the type of leader you want to be or the type of leader you don't want to be. But it's so important to be a follower. Likewise, you don't always have to be an outperformer or an over the top or an overachiever. Sometimes you can just water the grass that you have without trying to start into the next garden. Can you just dwell in the garden you just did? It's one of my biggest downfall. Like I would say, like, I do something and it's great, and I'm like, okay, what's next? I'm like, well, gosh, let's do it, let's do it, let's do one more, like, let's do something else. What's the next degree? What's the next?
Why do
And
you think
then
that's a downfall?
I would say because I lack I feel like I don't appreciate as much the grass that I have like right underneath me, right? And then unfortunately sometimes when I continue to chase, it makes me feel like I'm doing it for selfish reasons. It makes me feel like I'm only doing it for myself. In my personality, it's about the people, it's not about me. So I'd say unfortunately, after you continue to become such an overachiever, it there's a very thin line behind being an overachiever and being a little selfish to just thinking of you. It does not mean that you're always thinking of you, because you're trying to improve yourself, but until what point do you give up your time to build others? You see what I'm saying? Like I could, for example, when I come home, you know, my family lives in Colorado, I could just go for a bunch of runs because the altitude always gets me. In fact, I should probably always run, and I try to always run. But my little sister Emily, she likes to do other things, right? She likes to toss the ball, she likes to play soccer, she likes to pass. So there's two options, right? I can continue my drive to, you know, maybe if I'm training for a marathon, continue to do that because that's my discipline, or I can just give up that time to build others. You see that? It's a
Well,
thin line.
this is so fascinating. I think it is such a thin line. That's I think about this all the time because I live alone, so I can literally spend the whole day working on my own pursuits.
I know.
And I get
Yeah.
frustrated when I'm around other people because on one hand, it's addictive. It feels so good to be around other people, and I need
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
I feel like it does take away from my marathon training, from
Hmm.
studying. And I
Hmm.
always and
Yeah.
I think I am able to live in the moment with these people, but I am
In
afraid.
the back of your head.
I'm I'm afraid, Val, that I will
Yeah.
stop, that it will get so comfortable being with people that and I had a conversation with somebody who has the same career field as me, or who has achieved what I want in my career, who I deeply respect. And he gave
Yeah.
me this solace of, he said, your stripes are permanently etched in you. So in the sense of,
Mm.
if you have that drive, it's still going to be in you.
Yeah.
But I just have this fear that if I'm not surrounded by people like you,
Yeah.
that I will succumb to
The
average.
society.
And
Yeah,
and
the
even
society.
and even that, like even that is me passing a judgment on society and people, right? Which I don't
Right.
think is
Right.
good. I don't think
Yeah.
it's I don't think it's good that I'm passing this judgment. However, I mean, to be honest, I do and I am. And so I want to know how you, let's take this example with your sister. Well, family is important. I think I can justify not studying as much, or not maybe going out for an hour run instead of a 2-hour run, right? I think
Yeah.
that, how about things that are less critical? Say I was going to say friends, but friends are critical. But
Yeah.
to like just talk to that whole subject of how you balance your own pursuits versus
So
exactly the serving of other people.
Honestly, I have like the perfect example, and I don't know if this is like even what people would want to hear or like what they would like to answer, but this is just my mentality. But um sometimes, right, I would say even going back to my college career, right, I wouldn't never say I hang out with all the people from the church. I would even argue I didn't hang out with anybody from the church, actually, because I didn't like the people that behave like goody tissues. I'm like, hey,
Mm.
can we just all settle? We're all a bunch of sinners, all right? Can we just settle for the fact? That is just a plain fact, right? And the one thing that I can always give you, Anya, is that Jesus didn't go and hang out with all the pastors. He didn't just go and hang out with all the religious leaders and he sat down with all this, all these folks that were like high scholars, right? He sat down with all the sinners. He took his time. Like imagine he could have had the time to do other things for him, but he spent all his 33 years of life serving others, and not only other but the worst of the worst. We're talking about prostitutes, we're talking about like tax collectors. At the time they were bad. We're talking about people that would rob, people that would commit adultery, people that would kill. Like we're talking about like probably nowadays people that are in jail at this, right, like in our today's world. But he did it for us. He took his time for us. And the way I live my life is that when the time comes, and I think it's come from time to time, if God calls me to serve other people, which is where the military comes from me, I will do so, right? So going back to like how do we not feel guilty when we're not performing because we know we can be performing. It, for me, in my mentality, my roots is that a life that is only about me is not worth it. If I accomplish 10 marathons and I accomplish 10 triathlons and I deploy 10 times, a life that is only about my wins is not a life that is worth living. A life worth living for me is a life worth living for others, right?
Wow.
So when I hang out with other people, it I get happy as well, right? Because I feed off of that energy. But you have no idea what you're bringing into their lives that they need, right? Sometimes we're so quick to be like, oh man, we're missing on this workout, or we're missing on this, or we're missing on this whole workout, or their homework, or sometimes you just want to be alone, but you have no idea the drive and the interaction that that's causing in their lives. You have no idea how they think of you. They look at you, they look at your balance, they look at you, you have no idea what you're creating by just that interaction. And so when I feel a little guilty, I just, for example, I close my eyes for a little second and I'm like, God, I know you're up to something. And I know I feel a little guilty, but hey, act through me, because I feel like I should be doing more for me right now, but maybe you're calling me to do more for them. And I think I've reached a little bit of that point sometimes in my life where I think I could be more for me, but a life is not worth living. It's for me because it's just empty. So,
Have you always been religious?
yeah. Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like ever since I have like any kind of like thought, it started with my mom. I would say there's a lot of things in my family that have happened that you probably wouldn't think they're religious, decisions, and again, things just like they go a little more deeper into like the family things. But I would say that God has always been faithful, and I don't think it's just the love and the mercy and what he does for people is nothing that you've ever seen in other religions. And I love it that people can believe other spiritual books and whatnot. But I had yet to hear that somebody would leave the 99 just to get the one, right? And even when you are the most lost in the sauce person, the person that you think you're the most lost, Jesus is like, yeah, I know, I hang out with that person too. That prostitute, I hang out with her too. Yep, that person that has skin conditions and whatnot. Yep, I hang out with that person too, and I healed her. Like it just doesn't get better than that. You know what I mean? Like how does somebody live such a selfless life and you don't want to follow? For me, it's everything. So yeah, that's
And
the
it sounds
root.
Yeah. And it sounds like that military, that serving the country is how God is able to work through you, you found.
Yeah, everybody's got different things, right? There's so many people that like do voluntary organizations. There's some people that do like coaching, like voluntary coaching, just like in like younger people's sports. There are people that take out of their everyday. I have like one of my sergeants. He coaches like high school football. He doesn't get paid at all, and he like does like every day on the fall season just out of his time, right? Like I would say people that are so selfless to just give up their time. The more we grow, I understand that time is so finite that you have to really pay attention where you're spending your time. And the people that choose to spend that time in others are like, they should be the first ones going into heaven, because like, God bless you, you know what I mean? Like, people that even volunteer at churches, people that volunteer at races, like all the people that go out there in races and they're just giving out waters and whatnot. Like, when I'm running, I'm like, yeah, God bless you, dude. I'm like, you have no business.
Hmm.
You're actually getting no workout and you're out here handing waters. Like, why are you doing this? Like, those are the true heroes. They are giving up their time for others. Not, we are just running, we're just the ones running, we're the ones playing the sport, we're the ones serving, but there are people out there, they're like the ghost heroes here, where they're
Mm.
giving up the time which is finite, it's not returning into their life. So
The ghost
it
heroes. I like that.
so the military for me is just my outlet, right, to serve others. But there's so many other outlets, right? We can even think moms and with children, or like single dads too, they're all just doing it for their kids. And again, kids are a little different, right? Because there's some decision making in there. But how many families do we know where, parents, abandon kids and stuff, right? So it's even, parenthood is always a selfless act. It's
Hmm.
tremendous. I'm not a parent myself, but I cannot think of anything more selfless than also being a parent. So kudos for all the folks out there. Eventually, at the end, like, nothing is a setback. Nothing is a setback. It's just a setup. It's just a setup to see what you're gonna do with it. Every drawback that you present in your life, not even emotionally, spiritually, in your career, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's such a setback, like a disease, sickness, like, yeah, everything looks like a setback, but you have no idea what kind of setup God's got on that realm, so just a different way to just pivot situations.
And
So
it goes back to what you said about what's the next best thing you can do here.
yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
to wake up at 4:30 a.m., I'm sure you go to bed. Say, what's your bedtime?
I tried to do 9, but that is sometimes I'm not so, but I
So,
try to, because I try to, dude, but I
so let's
can't
take
all the time.
let's take that example 9. So let's say it's late. It's 9:20. Going to bed at 9:20 is better than going to bed at 9:50. So what's the next best thing you can do? If it's 9:20 and you've already 20 minutes, okay? Are you going to be 50 minutes past your bedtime? Or are you only going to be 20? That's how
Yeah.
that's so powerful. And so thinking about the next 5, 10 years of your life, what are your next pursuits?
I would say, I've gotten asked this a couple times actually, like in the past year. And I would say, like a year ago, I would have been able to answer on the things that I already accomplished. So I'm just blessed and grateful that I was able to do that. I would say, I want to have, um, I love following my career. I've been following like my job career for a little while, and I would like to follow my personal life a little bit more, right? I think I put that in the back burner, like relationships, like more like romantic relationships, put them in the back burner. I think like I established a relationship with somebody uh for like 4 years, and that also comes with life, like how do we pivot from like relationships that didn't work, and how do you move on from some of that? And maybe that's a conversation for another day too, but life happens, right? So I would say, very excited with some of my military commitments that are going to take up most of my 2026. Excited for my 2027, to just develop into my actual family, to get back to them. As I said, they live in Colorado, and I haven't been able, again, Purdue's in Indiana, I haven't been able to really give them back that time. So my little sister, she's young, she's 10, and so I want to give back to her. I don't want to be an older sister that is absent from her growth. I just don't want her to grow like that, and so I can give you like my next 2-3 years would be to just try to give back to my family, and even like, again, some of the churches around me that I haven't been able to put as much time to. Fitness, I think, is something that is always good for you. Unfortunately, I'm not the type of person that likes to go on races because like I signed up for it to do. I believe, and it's just me, okay? So just bear with me. I believe that if you set a date in the calendar, let's say I want to run a marathon May 15th, right? May 16th. Then I can do a training plan until May 16, and I go trace a 26-mile route, right? I believe you do not to have just a set stone society date that somebody gives you just for you to go do a goal that you want to do. You don't have
Yes.
to sign up for something. People just always there, and you know what? We look for that reward for the
Yes.
next thing, right? And little do you know, you can set up that same thing. You can run that same marathon the day after, the day before,
Yes.
right? Or a month later, right? It's just sometimes we just make other people set that for us, and
Yes.
we got to be strong enough to set that for ourselves, right? So I would say, going back to your question, what's going on in the next 5-10 years, right? Love to stay in the military, love to create more impact in the troops around me. How can I be of good leadership, right? And also followership. How can I understand for some of my folks that have been in the military for 20-25 years, right? um those are the folks that have the most knowledge. So hopefully get more proficient at my job through the peers around me, and try to give back to my family. My own fitness, I'll come and go. And if I feel like running more one day or lifting more, then I'll set up a date and I'll go for it, right? But I don't believe in just societal predetermined dates. Like I want to do it myself, so those are the next couple of years. We'll see what else happens later. Hopefully have kids. I don't know.
Let's give I definitely want to have you back and talk about relationships. Let's give a little teaser.
100%.
Let's give a little teaser of what that aspect of life looks like in terms of setting aside that time more towards that personal life, as you mentioned. What's
Oh
like the
man, it's really,
crux of what's like the crux of what you struggle with or what you're going through with that?
I'd say one of the hardest things, it's to know that you are in a relationship that is unequally yoked. So in the Bible, they describe like a marriage as like an equally yoked couple, right? It's basically having like the same foundation and the same root there, the same like godly foundation. And I would say one of the hardest things that you can find in this world, and we don't have to make it about the Bible either, but like how do you find that equal yoke, right? And how do you know when that yoke is equal, right? Same question in a different sense, but everybody keeps chasing these opportunities through social media, or like all about the looks in like dating apps and whatnot, right? But we're just, and as we're like in this like glimpse of time where like there's no better, right? Like if you meet people in person, are people at the bar. So probably not necessarily an athlete would love to be in a bar drinking alcohol, right? And if you are at the gym, then like you don't have good gym etiquette because you're hitting on somebody at the gym, not good. If you are in a dating app, then you're only about the look. So wait, where are we supposed to find these people, right? So I'll probably leave it in that teaser, and I have more opinions about the matter. But in our society, we've just unfortunately lost the ability to meet people casually, and that's hurting us tremendously. It really is.
Right, there's that concept of the third space where we have the first space, our home, second space is the work, and third space is
Yep.
the place we intermingle. And university is such a great third space that comes about
Yes.
naturally, and then we get into this real world. So I let's talk about this. That's a good teaser for everybody. Let's save that for the next one.
Let's
And
do it.
finally, what city does your family live in, Colorado?
They live in Parker, actually. It's like southeast of Denver. Yep. They live in Lone Tree for a little bit, and I think they just bought property in Parker. So,
Would you see
uh,
yourself moving out here?
100,000%. I want to desperately, but my military commitment is here, so I'm probably gonna stick around here for a couple of years. But my job is actually a little remote now. Like I'm considered remote. So obviously I did tell you about my military commitment. So I'm not gonna be able to travel there soon, but I'm hoping 2027 I can probably spend a lot more time in Colorado. So I love it over there too much. I love the mentality of people just trying to go after it, like take care of the winter and there's just so many activities to do in that place. So 100% I'd love to move to Colorado. Hopefully it's in God's plans because it's in mine. So
Love that. Yeah,
uh,
people take advantage here of the winter and of the summer, which is an awesome thing coming from
it's
living in the Midwest. You can really
dude,
enjoy the whole
yeah.
year.
I also didn't, I took for granted living so close to the mountains. Bogota is like, I think like the third or fourth largest, like highest in altitude capital in the world. It's like 8,000 feet above sea level. And the Midwest is like 600 feet. Like it's horrible, right? And so when I go to Colorado, I kind of remind myself of like home a little bit, So I really like it. It's good. So
Nice.
hopefully,
Okay. Well, Val,
hey
thank you
girl,
so much.
yeah.
That was awesome. You're one of the
Hey,
best
thanks,
people I've talked to. I look forward
girl.
to
Thank you for
staying
your
in touch with
time.
you.
Girl, thank you for your time, and I know you got all these pursuits, in fitness and also like within your life, and always open to like have a conversation about whatever's going through your head. I'm an unbiased opinion. You gotta get those as well. People that are super out of your life,
Hmm.
and they can just give you just good human wisdom there. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, girl.
I love it. Thank you for your time. Okay,
All
we'll
right,
talk
talk
soon.
to you soon. Bye, girl.
Bye bye.